So hey guys, I want to go through this video. I've been watching this rabbi because I was interested in the story of Purim, and that's coming up. And he did a great little history, 3-part history on it, and I saw that he had this series on Disproving Christianity, so I'm going to just watch the Christianity portion and see what he says, and and there's a lot of things I like that he says about Christianity that are definitely wrong. And I'm a believer that Torah should be kept and Sabbath should be kept, and there's certain things that the church has changed over time and dispensed that I definitely agree with him on. But I think he would, he mentions Messianic Judaism, but doesn't really go into it. And I feel like he doesn't know much about it. And I wish he would study that a little bit more, and maybe get some insights and maybe argue those points. But otherwise, hope you enjoy this.
By TorahAnytime.com.
Everybody, welcome all our Torah Anytime viewers. Today we are speaking about a heated subject. It's something that I take more personally than any of the other religions that we have disproved. One of the reasons is, well, you'll soon see why. I take it personally. The fact that they go and they spend, and this is a recent number that came to my attention, that the Christians put roughly around, in the past decade, about $1 billion to evangelize Jews, which is a significant amount of money. And that's something that I take really personally, because they're taking our brothers and sisters from the right religion, from the correct, or even from no religion, and putting them in an idolatrous type of religion. Which, again, we spoke about, we did. This is the third class that I'm giving on Christianity. One of them I gave a class speaking about is Christianity Avodah Zarah? I am not going to repeat any of that information. That's already on Torah Anytime, I think titled, Is Christianity Avodah Zarah, if I'm not mistaken. Then I gave another class on Christianity, Disproving, that JC, which we're going to term JC for Jesus, is 100% not the Messiah. I gave it in the Mashiach series, I believe. So we're not going to repeat any of those ideas. The ideas that we're going to be focusing tonight is, how do we prove that we know with 100% certainty that this religion is fake, it's man-made, and it's 100% not divine. Not 99, maybe, no, 100% without a doubt in your mind that it is a man-made religion and it's not a divine religion at all.
In a lot of ways, he's right that it is man-made, but so is Judaism in a lot of ways, and we're adding to God's word it could be good thoughts, but we have to always come back to the source. So, with Constantine taking over Christianity and the Roman Catholic Church and all that, could be a lot of man-made doctrines infiltrating what was originally true. So, but the same could be said with Judaism, where Zohar and the Mishnah and all these things that they add. So, but just some food for thought. But continuing on there.
The other idea to keep in mind, I don't think it is relevant to anybody over here, I hope, but there are many people that when they hear these type of classes, if they are involved with Jesus or the New Testament or Christianity, they take this very, very personally, what I say, and they don't listen to any of the actual things that I say. They just right away fight back with no substance to the fighting back. There's no sources to it. One of the most responded class that I gave to, most comments, most emails, most text on, was disproving that JC was the Mashiach, which just showed me how many non-Jews actually listen to my classes. And well, I hope non-Jews listening to my class. I hope they're not Jews that are following Christianity that are listening to my classes. But if they are, at least they're listening to some Torah. But the idea is that when you're learning about this, and if you are in that boat, and unfortunately I have spoken to many people in.
That's one good thing, is that hopefully a lot of Christians are listening to Torah, and I think there's an awakening coming to the truth of Torah. But I think both Jews today and Christians would do better, and I think Rabbi Zitron would agree that we should go back to the source of Torah. Not even going to the New Testament to start off, because everything that Paul's talking about, anything, even that Jesus references, is all referencing the Tanakh and the Torah, and we should be using that. And that understanding that we gain from learning that to apply it to the letters and the Gospels, which they might not have even been considered scripture when they were writing it. Paul's writing letters, and these letters were copied, It's easier to say that the Tanakh in the Old Testament and the care that was taken with it is something that's more solid. So we can't look at something that Paul is saying and say, well, this contradicts the whole of Scripture, but Paul said it. Maybe we're misinterpreting Paul. Maybe it wasn't transcribed exactly as it should have been. Food for thought.
In this boat, that they're in the Christian world and they're in conflict. Is Christianity right? Is Judaism right? Maybe they're both right. Let's just do everything. And I think I've mentioned this. I've went into someone's house who had pictures of Mary and crosses everywhere and also had mezuzahs. He was just trying to cover all his bases. Religion doesn't work that way. You can't cover all your bases by dabbling in all the religions, because every religion says that the other religion is wrong. Or at least 99% of the religions say that. So when you're going into this, when you're looking into this, you have to look at it with an open.
And I wouldn't say that true Christianity would say that about Judaism. We'd say that the foundation is true. They just miss Mashiach. But unfortunately, modern Christianity does depart, and you get into, I'm talking way more than I wanted to, but dispensations saying that we are not Israel. But where did Paul go? He went to synagogues. Spent all the time talking to Jews. Not to even convert them. I wouldn't consider Paul to have a conversion. It's just he believed in Messiah. He didn't change, anything else. Maybe some of the added rituals and the added laws and the Talmudic teachings, which are not all bad. It's just how they taught the Torah, and you'd hear Yeshua say, you've heard it said, but I tell you. He wasn't contradicting the Torah. He was contradicting these added thoughts. And really, there's midrashing. What midrashing, about what did the Torah mean here, and what's the best way to do it? And Jesus, and they throw a lot of these tough questions at Jesus, and I think he answers them all very well. I don't think he was ever contradicting Torah. Maybe some of things that were added to Judaism, and over time, Judaism, I think, has gotten farther and farther away from what Moshe taught. And then the same with Christianity. It's gone super far away from what Jesus taught, what JC taught, what Yeshua taught, what Paul taught.
Open mind with an understanding of what is the truth. And we're searching today for what is the truth. The Christians, when they go and they try to evangelize Jews, they tend to pick particular people to convert to Christianity. And I'll share with you the story. So this was maybe a few weeks ago that it was the middle of the day. I happened to be home. I get my doorbell rings, and I go downstairs. I look at the through the to see who's by the door. It's two African American women are sitting there with pamphlets in their hand. So I'm like, either they're trying to sell me a religion or cookies. That's what's going to be happening right now. I could almost So I open the door. They're out there all in smiles, and and they're like, do you want an end of all suffering? So I, like a good Jew, respond to a question with another question. And I say, are you guys J witnesses? And I actually said specifically J witnesses, because you're not supposed to say that, because that's God name. And I said, are you guys J witness? Are you guys part of the J witness protection program? And they're like, yes, we are. And without missing a beat, they're like, so do you want to end suffering? I don't know what they expected my answer to be. I'd be like, no. I wish suffering on everyone. Like, what do they expect any normal human being that is not locked behind bars to say when they ask that question? Of course they're going to say yes. That is the game already behind them. They're already saying this in order to, like, okay, you're saying yes, and now we agree on something. We have a rapport. Let's move on. Do you believe in Jesus? Whatever. They're not going to jump into there. They're obviously going to take a few baby steps before they get into the to the big one. But anyway, so they're going, they're sitting over there. They're like, do you want an end of all suffering? So I said, yes, of course I do. Who wouldn't want to end of all suffering? And then I just happened to add in, by the way, I happen to be an Orthodox person who happened to also teach on the Torah. So they were like, okay, thank you, have a good day. And they left. I'm like, wait. I'm like, I was literally like, when I saw them, I'm like, should I record this? I'm like, I was like, literally had my phone out, wanted to, but I was like, legally, whatever, I have to probably ask them. So I said, forget it. I'm like, is that all? They were like, yeah, because we're both fighting for the same cause. So I responded back. I'm like, we may be fighting for the same cause, but we're on very different roads. So they were like, yeah, as long as we get to the same, end goal. I'm like, I don't know. I don't think so. And we all laughed very uncomfortably as they, as they left. And that's it. They left. Now the question is, they're coming door to door. They saw my mezuzah on the door. They saw that this was an order. I mean, I live in a very Orthodox community. They didn't expect, for me to come out in my robe and a thick cross dangling, there, with my, with my black hood on, and be like, yes, sisters. Like they expected to be a Jew there. But what happens when they all of a sudden realize that I may have some inkling of knowledge on the Torah? They're like, okay, fine, have a good day. Like, they're not wasting time. Why not wasting my time? If this is the truth, then try to convince me. If it's not the truth, then why are you convincing everybody else? And it's a good thing that they left, because 911 would have probably had to been called at some point.
You would have liked that.
You know what? And it's a problem, because you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to go there and try to change the ideas of the missionaries' mind. The missionaries work like robots. They have their programmed things to say, and if you throw them off their thing, they won't respond to your question. They'll just go back to whatever they were supposed to say, and they'll, continue with their script that they have.
I haven't found this with Jehovah's Witnesses, and I've only really spoken to one, because when I first had an encounter, they mainly wanted to speak to my wife, my ex-wife at the time, and they were really interested in talking to me, and it was really kind of combative. And then, actually, I was going through my divorce, and I was like trying to find God, and really open. So I spent time talking to this guy. I would actually go to the Kingdom Hall, one of the few Christians that see in the inside of the Kingdom Hall. I just spent, Saturdays I would go and I'd speak to, Sabbath. So I went, spoke, and we had dialogue. And in a lot of ways, Judaism will align more with Jehovah's Witnesses over Christianity today, modern Christianity. Like one example would be that they don't really believe that we go to heaven. They don't believe the end goal is Garden of Eden again, just like how it started, bringing the people back to the land where the garden is going to cover the whole earth, and that we believe we stay on earth. And in Judaism, that's heaven wasn't really an idea that they had. That's Greek pagan idea. And that God dwells in heaven, that we go to live with God. These are pagan ideas to them. They don't like this. They don't like the idea of like polytheism. There's three different parts of God. There's three different gods. It's okay if there's three different parts. Sorry. But if there's three different gods, that's pagan to them. It's polytheism. There's too many gods. It's the pantheon of gods. So that's maybe topics he'll bring up. But and maybe that's one problem with Jehovah's Witnesses. They're trying to skirt that issue with Jesus being an angel, which kind of creates more problems with the New Testament, where he's claiming to be God, and they're saying he's claiming to be like God. So in a few ways, they're trying to fit more into the mold. They don't keep any days. So, like I believe maybe we should keep, or try, we can't really truly keep, the feasts of the Lord, the Moedim, but we should honor them and remember them. There's no temple. We don't live in the land. We're in exile. So, trying to keep Passover, a little tough. Trying to keep Sukkot and all these things. But we can still remember them and honor them. These are God's holy days, and we don't receive the blessing of keeping them because of our sin and being in exile. But one day we return to the land, we'll get to take part in them again. Whereas the Jehovah's Witness doesn't keep Christmas, doesn't keep Easter. They think these are pagan days. The only thing they'll do is a communion, which only the 144,000 is said to have taken place. But they already have 144,000 names, so and these 144,000 are the only ones that they believe actually go to heaven to reign as judges. For the rest of the people will be on earth. Believers will be on earth, and also annihilationism. There's no hell, which could also be considered a pagan idea. We'll see what he gets into on Sheol, but that it simply is destruction of your soul. It's annihilationism when you die. But I've enjoyed my talks with Jehovah's Witnesses, and I felt like he was open to certain ideas that I would share with him. And for the most part, he stuck to his agenda, but every once in a while you could break them out of it. So having the conversation isn't completely pointless. He was older and seasoned, and probably more willing to accept than maybe some of the younger ones who don't want to really get into it. But I think there's true seekers in any religion, that God's kind of drawing people from all corners of the world.
I've tried it, unfortunately, way too many times. It's really a waste of time. There's no reason for it. So they go to the Jews, and they try to convert them to Christianity. Some of them, what they try to do is they say, listen, come to Christianity, but don't worry. What they did is they sort of merged Christianity and Judaism. It's called Messianic, Messianic Christianity, Messianic Judaism, however you want to phrase the second word. And they say, listen, it's Jewish with a little bonus of, Jesus involved in here. So, like, we do the same things. And though we're tzitzis, they'll wear, they'll have a big mezuzah. There's a place on Coney Island over here. I think I've mentioned this over here before. A few blocks from here, a huge, it looks like a big shul, big plaques, huge silver mezuzah. I'm like, wow. I'm like, how are they not scared that no one's going to steal? That's a thick, big silver mezuzah. Maybe stainless steel. So I'm looking over there. I'm like, I never saw this shul over here, and I've been living here for quite some time. I never saw the shul. All of a sudden, I'm looking at the plaques. It's like, it's very, very oblivious. All of a sudden, I see like in small letters in a little plaque, like right near the hydrant or something. There's like, Messianic, synagogue. I'm like, oh, there it is. And, that's why I haven't known about it. So they masquerade their entire religion to try to convince Jews. This is 100% fraud. This is like not even trying, this is just trying to deceive the Jews into coming into their religion. So this is one of the reasons why I take it very, very personally when I'm dealing with this thing. Because you think about it, you don't have people, you don't have Muslims sitting out with flyers and be like, Allah, Allah, Allah Akbar, yeah. They don't go there and they try to kill us, but I'm saying, but they're not trying to go and change us, through, to convert to their religion. Christianity is one of the only religions nowadays that are so active in trying to get the Jews away from Judaism. Also, when you look at intermarriage rate, there was, and again, this is a statistics that I saw. How accurate it is? It sounds pretty accurate, but I can't validate it's 100% authenticity. I couldn't find the actual source for it.
I didn't say we're trying to get them away from Judaism. We're just trying to evolve their thinking. It's still the core values. It's not like Messianic Judaism is. It's like a lie, it's just okay. We found the Messiah, first coming, second coming is coming. Mm-hmm.
But it said like this, that 50 years ago there were roughly around 5.5 million Jews in the United States. Then, during that 50 years, there was at least 500,000 Jewish immigrants that came into the United States. Now, there's also roughly 5.5, I think there's a little bit more, I think there's more close to 6.5 million Jews in America. Now, what happened in the 50 years with all the immigrants that are coming in, all the Jewish immigrants, all the people that they should have had children, where do all the Jews go? So, the statistic goes on, and it says that the average birth rate of non-Orthodox American Jews is about 1 child per family. There's 2 dogs and 2 cats involved also, but there's 1 child per family. In order for a family to either stay as status quo in the numbers that they have to have at least 2 kids, or it's at least 2.1 if you're going according to statistical analysis. You have to have at least 2 kids in order for the numbers to stay. And that makes sense, because there's 2 parents, and if you want the same number to be after those parents die, you need at least 2 kids. If the Jewish non-Orthodox population is only having 1 kid, that means every generation the Jewish population is decreasing by 50%. Not only that, you have between the ages of 18 to 39 an intermarriage rate of 72%. That is a significant, and from those intermarried couples, their children, only 4% are brought up with a Jewish identity. 96% of those Jewish or not Jewish, depending on who, if the mother or the father was a Jew, are brought up not knowing anything about Judaism, completely oblivious to anything that is their heritage or anything that they have to do with. And it goes on, within 3 or more generations, 97% of today's non-Orthodox Jews will have no Jewish descendants. That is a very, very scary and sad fact for the entire Jewish nation. Now, when these, people intermarry, where do they get married usually? The non-religious wedding? No, they usually get married at churches. I'm not saying it's 100% of the time, but very, very likely they'll get married at a church, especially if they're marrying somebody who is a little bit, Christian. Of course they're going to get married at a church or a Reformed temple. Can you call it any better? And it's really unfortunate. I know a guy who comes to some of my classes. I don't know why, but he comes, and his father is Jewish, his mother is not. That's a problem. I told him he shouldn't become Jew, not Jew, and learning Torah is a problem itself. But he comes in and he's, and he tells me about his family. His mother is like Christian. His father is Jewish, but his entire siblings are all very, very involved in the church. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Out of all, not only do you stay secular, but you're also going and getting involved in the church. Okay, so. That is why this is something that I decided to devote an entire class to, even though we spoke about it twice. But it's something that I feel is of importance. And again, this is very important that I'm not presenting this information that you should go, like I know somebody that goes on chat rooms and goes and just picks fights with Catholics. This is not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to go and wake people up to realize if they are Jewish in this idolatrous cult, then they should go and they should definitely do some research and learn what it's really all about. So in order to disprove this, we have to go based on our criteria that were presented a few classes ago. Number 1. We gave five different criteria. Number one, is there a reason to believe that this religion is God-given? For Christianity, it actually checks off. There is. JC, Jesus, he claims that he is the Son of God, prophet, Messiah, a bunch of other things that sort of conflict with each other, but we'll leave that for later. He claims that he is the Messiah, and he has a divine connection with God. So that actually checks off. So they have a belief over here that it is a God-given religion. Part two is where it gets a little problematic. Can it easily be made up? And the answer is yeah, because who else can say, like, yeah, he's the Son of God. I saw God go and impregnate Mary. Like there's nobody that you can say that. There's nobody else other than him that can state what the state that he has. His prophetic visions, no one else had it. No one else decided and said, yeah, so God came to me and told me that he's, he's the Messiah. I should rephrase that. Nobody of noteworthy said that. Number three, if this is a God-given religion, how do we know that it is still current? Right? So we claim that Judaism is the current religion, but how do we know that it's still current? We're going to actually deal with that today. We're going to speak about that today. How do we know that Judaism is still current to this day? But furthermore, if it's Christianity, how do we know that Christianity is current to this day? Maybe it's like the Islam, the Arabs say that Islam, that Muhammad came in afterwards, and that is the final, the final religion. Number 4 and 5 is, number 4 we spoke about is selective evidence, where you see what you want to see. You pretend, they claim that Christianity is so true. Why? Because look, there's over 2.2 billion people that are following. This is the largest religion to date. 2.2 billion people are following this religion. Must be that it's a true religion. Or possibly another more likely alternative answer would be, well, let's look about why and how people came and converted to Christianity. Do you think people went there? They had a slew of religions in front of them. You're like, you know what? It's a religion, game show. Let's see what's the right religion. And they went and they searched and investigated. No, that's not how people become Christians. People become Christians, and if you look at it historically, the ruler usually became Christian, forced everybody else to become Christians, good for politics, and then he went, and that's how people became religious. So the Christian. So it's not saying like, oh, this is the right religion because there's so many people. Many people are ignorant in today's age. Even the Christians are ignorant in today's day and age. They don't even know the New Testament. They don't even know that it's, that it's a what's it called? That it's something to do that. It's fine. You loosened it up. So number 5 is positive evidence. How do we know that he has a connection with God? So a good idea would be prophecy. Call yourself a prophet. Predict something in the future. Let me see. So something that you're going to predict in the future. Or lesser, and we're going to see, what about miracles? What about if someone could be a miracle worker? If somebody's a miracle worker, do you think does that count as having some divine powers or even having some, divinity involved with you? Okay, so Christianity evolved from Judaism. I
like that he drinks water instead of Sprite. That makes me feel better.
think that's pretty, that's a pretty obvious thing. It actually evolved from the final years of JC's life. When you look at Christianity in its history, it's not the most lovey-dovey of religions. And in fact, there are tens of millions, if not more, murdered in the name of Christianity. You have the Crusades, the Spanish Inquisition, the 30 Years' War, the genocide of the native civilizations in the Americas, the Third Reich, the Rwandan genocide, and more and more. There are many people that were murdered in the sake of Christianity. So this is...
Weren't the Jews driven out of Spain during the Spanish Inquisition as well?
It's not a religion that spews only love and hate, even though now they're much better off than they were before. Now they stopped with the murdering and the killing, and it's more. Now it's trying to get everybody through love and happiness, which is also very dangerous. You look at who they make their saints. You could tell a little bit about who they are as a religion. There's somebody by the name of Saint Hugh. This was an 8-year-old boy that was found murdered. They blamed the Jews.
So I don't believe there's any divinity in the saints. So I can just write this off. So, yeah, when you look at a lot of the saints of Catholicism, there's a lot of holes to find, and it's easy to pick at. But it's the same to be like, if I'm a chiropractor, so this chiropractor's doing this weird stuff. All chiropractors must do this. And you can't take that approach. It's the same with medical doctors. Same with Judaism. It's like, this medical doctor was lying and cheating and fraudulent, insurance billing, and all medical doctors must be like that. No, you can't make that conclusion.
They killed then 18 Jews, and then they called you a saint. There's also somebody by the name of Saint Simon. He was a 2-year-old that was killed, and they blamed the Jews.
And most Christians don't know a lot of this history, where the early, even Protestantism was very anti-Semitic. Martin Luther, Chrysostom, a lot of those guys, very anti-Semitic statements. Synagogue of Satan really hated Jewish festivals, hated the Jews. That's kind of what I see as hating themselves, because they had a dispensation where the church had replaced Israel, and I don't believe that is true. And I think the Messianic Judaism is coming to that conclusion.
They went and they killed all the Jews in the city of Trent, and then they turned Simon into a saint. Saint Bernard, he's somebody who called the Jews dogs, and they have the power of the devil, and he made the criteria. Yeah, now you can be a saint, right? So we see a sort of pattern over here. It wasn't like, yeah, great people did great things, became saints. You have people here that were vile, destructive, immoral people that went and did, well, these are children, but you're looking at it in the other ones, they did bad things and then became saints. So that already tells you something about the religions. Also, let's look at the authors of the New Testament. They claim the New Testament was written prophetically. Who are the authors of these people? Did they ever, this is a very good question, did they ever actually meet, Jesus, I got his autograph, while he went and he was flying one day. I was like, oh, Jesus, I love you, I love your work. Can you sign my, my stone tablet? They went and did they ever actually see JC? Did they ever actually see Jesus? And the answer is no. The writers of the New Testament, all the writers of all the Gospels, never actually met Jesus. In fact, there was a period of a minimum of 40 years from when he died till when the first Gospel, which was Mark, was written. And then over the period of the next 40 years, other Gospels were written. So not only nobody saw him, they're dealing with people who was an eyewitness of eyewitnesses, or even just an eyewitness. And the Catholic Church itself claims that half the books of the New Testament, which was written by Paul, never met JC. Well, let me rephrase that. He met JC 30 years after he died in a vision. So, again, who's...
I don't agree with that history. I'm interested to see some references on that. It wasn't 30 years after. That would have been almost close to the destruction of the Second Temple. It was, I think, closer to 5 years after the death and resurrection of Yeshua that Paul had the vision on the road to Damascus. Because at this point, Peter and the rest of the apostles, the disciples, were mainly hanging around in the Jerusalem area and the Galilee. They hadn't gone out to the nations. That was really Paul's calling as a rabbi, a believer in Judaism. I believe he was called because of his knowledge, extensive knowledge of the Torah. No matter what you think about being under Gamliel or being taught under him, a notable rabbi that was actually in part of their history that he would recognize, but I'm sure he would disregard that as truth. But as far as the story goes, many of the disciples that wrote Gospels did in fact know Jesus, and Paul, yes, didn't physically meet him.
He's gonna say, no, you didn't. I was with you the whole time. I had the same shrooms as you, and I didn't. No, they're not gonna say that. No one could deny the fact that he claimed that he had a vision. Did they have any predictions in Christianity? In fact, they did have sort of a prediction. The prediction was that the Jewish people are going to stay in exile until they go and they accept Jesus as their Messiah. That was all nice and dandy. It was working well for them until the state of Israel came into effect, and then they're like, this kind of like, let's just sketch that from our repertoire. This is not true, because all of a sudden now we do it. Now we are in exile, but we have a state all of a sudden. So where are you saying that according to the Christians' predictions that they're always going to be in exile? The Christians believe that they believe in the Torah. They call it the Old Testament, and then they believe in part 2, the sequel, which was the New Testament. The problem with that is that kind of would have been a good idea to hint that in the first book, or the first sequel. The idea, as you can understand, like this: a king once died, left 2 sons. And he never appointed one of the sons as the next king. So the entire kingdom split into 2. It says, no, this one's going to be king, and this says, no, this one's going to be king. And they were fighting each other, and finally the elders met, and they decided they have to make it. This is splitting the kingdom apart. They have to make some sort of an agreement. So they went in, and while they're having this debate with the two sons saying, I'm going to be king, and the other one says, I'm going to be king, one of the sons, the prince, gets up and he says, listen, Father came to me in a dream last night, and he told me that I'm supposed to be the next king. So the wise men, the people from the council said, if your father wanted you to be the king, he should have came to us in a dream and told us that you are to be the king. So the same thing, if Jesus was supposed to be the Messiah, and he only told Jesus, his son, who is him, who's the Messiah, who's a prophet, who's also partly him. Imagine that conversation that had to go on in heaven, God goes on to hey, my son, my son, I'm going to send you on a mission. It's going to be a suicide mission. I'm going to send you on a mission. But it's not going to be, it's me, it's you, it's together, we're all together, we're, singing together. Where is this? How do you even understand what's going on over here? It doesn't even make logical sense. Forget about, trying to go and figure out from a philosophical standpoint, from a logical perspective, it makes absolutely no sense. He has a son, but is there a mother involved? Where did the son come from? I had so many questions on this thing, And then there's a Holy Spirit. I'm like, where did this Holy Spirit come into? And we're actually going to see when it actually was introduced to Christianity.
So, yes, believing in different parts is important. So, being the Son, you better see as an extension of God. He's an emissary. He's a way to interact with. He was sent to the Jews, like he said. He was sent to his people. Only sent to the lost sheep of Israel. That's a quote from Matthew. Sorry. And the point was he was interacting with the rabbis and trying to answer the question and dealing with Jews because they had the foundation of the understanding and the Torah. Sorry, he wasn't going to the Gentiles. Even when he spoke to a Canaanite woman, he was ignoring her and told her that he shouldn't give, food to the children's food to the dogs, essentially calling her a dog. And it's the food to the children who would accept and understand it. Don't throw pearls before swine, that idea. So, because we have the understanding that Yahweh, even when he spoke at Mount Sinai, the people couldn't stand his voice. They'll never speak to that way again to us. And they speak through Moses, revealing his power and his presence. We can't be in his full presence like we were in the garden because we're sinful. So he has to send a diluted form to interact with us. Because of our sin. And it's not that he can't do it, it's because he would destroy us if he did. So it's out of love that he communicates in this way. And that's the only understanding that I think you can really have.
There is a female god and a male god.
Who, Christians?
Yeah, and I forgot which one of them. There's so many different gods.
Yeah, there's thousands of different them. The female version? I don't know. I've never heard that.
A mother god is the female version. I don't know anything about it, but the point of the male isn't that it's just to show kingship and authority. It's not that he is a man. It's just, since Adam was to be the head of the household, God is our head. Can't be a woman, and it's not that he's a woman. He's divine. We can't even comprehend that. But I'm sure there's both aspects in there, since we are created from him. Obviously, there's both. But going down that road will confuse you. It just uses the word son and king, and we are his bride, just to convey an idea.
It's possible. I've never heard that. Generally, they have a Trinity. Again, there's so many different denominations that different levels of the Trinity. The J Witnesses, they don't hold as JC as an actual God. On the God level is a little bit lower. Second place, whatever. So you have different variants of it. But I don't know if there's a female variant involved. It might be. Out of all the thousands of different versions of it, I wouldn't be surprised. Let's speak
And there's lots of different versions of Judaism too.
a little bit about the virgin birth. virgin birth must have been a very interesting story, because Mary and Joseph, happily engaged couple. I'm sure of some, what is Simcha Spot, whatever, got them all on there. And, Joseph left. He comes back. Mazel Tov, Mary's pregnant. He's scratching his head. He's like, listen. He says, how did this happen? He says, the punishment for this thing? And she gets nervous. She says, no. God implanted this into me. Very faithful. No, did nothing. God implanted, laser beamed right into my womb, a baby. I have nothing to do it. And Joseph was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, fine. And let's just go with that. Who is the one to validate that? Could anybody, maybe there were three old wise men. They were like, yeah, we saw it. We were watching. We saw it all happen. Maybe that's why they came afterward. They say an interesting joke.
Well, couldn't the Muslims say the same thing to you about Ishmael and Isaac? Of course he was born to Sarah when she was 90 years old, right? Ishmael's obviously the firstborn. He is through who the Messiah will come. Can't that same argument be? Are there greater miracles have been done? Miraculous conception. That's what you're getting stuck on here. Parting the Red Sea and everything else. That's not far-fetched for you either.
So, no one know who the father was. All of a sudden, the baby is born. Three old men coming to visit the baby. But in any case, they come in and they claim that no, there is proof from the Torah that a virgin is going to give birth. What is the proof? It's from Isaiah, Yeshayahu, chapter 7, verse 14. There is a word there that is said that is ha'alma. Ha'alma in the normal translation, I shouldn't say normal translation, in every single translation ever, is known as the young woman. Christians go and say, no, this means a virgin. Now, I have to state that nowhere, ever, in all the divine books of the Torah, is Alma ever noted as virgin. Virgin is known as Betula. That is a virgin. Alma is never known as a young woman. Christianity changed it. They're like, no, this is a virgin. Now, even if we were to, let's say, yeah, it means virgin. Even if you read it linguistically, it doesn't even make sense. It would say a virgin who gave birth, which means it's not implying that she was a virgin at conception. Rather, it implies that she was a virgin when she got married, like everybody else, every other Jewish woman over there that was a virgin when she got married, and she gave birth. This was the first child. It wouldn't even linguistically make sense that she was a virgin at conception. So this thing makes sense already. It does not make sense from two angles. Furthermore, we have to look at it. What is the context of this verse in Isaiah? And by the way, they always throw out this Isaiah. Isaiah 53. They throw out a lot of these verses, not knowing. 90% of them, even when they say this, don't even know the verse before it or after it of when they claim this thing. So, if you're looking at the context of what is this pasuk actually talking about, King Achaz went to Yeshayahu, the prophet, and he says he was nervous. The northern Jewish kingdom has been destroyed. Now, the king was nervous about the southern, Jewish kingdom. Is this going to suffer the same fate as the northern kingdom? So he went to Isaiah and he said, please, prophesy, let me know what's going to happen. So Isaiah went and he prophesies and he says, Ha'alma, which by the way, correct translation means not a virgin, but it will be the young woman. There's a very difference. So not only did they change the meaning of the word, they also changed the pretext of it. Hey always implies the. The means something more specific. They changed it to an a. A implying something, in the future, possibly they don't know. When Isaiah said the young woman means, Ha'alma, the young woman means that me and you both know this woman. It's like you're saying the woman. The woman means that you're implying to know somebody, not a woman. The woman is implying to know somebody. Who is this woman? So you look at chapter 8 of Isaiah, and this is.
Okay, I had to run, but actually this is good because I wasn't sure on a few of these claims. So here's Isaiah 7:14, and the thing is, in this verse he says, "I'm going to give you a sign." So Adonai will give you a sign. So it's a miracle, it's not meant to be really understood. But he brings up the question of Alima or Bitalula, being virgin. So Alima is used 7 times in the Hebrew Bible, and in each instance it either explicitly means a virgin or implies it, because in the Bible, Alima always refers to an unmarried woman of good reputation. In Genesis 24:43, It applies to Rebekah, Isaac's future bride, already spoken of in Genesis 24:16 as a virgin, the Betula. In Exodus 2:8, it describes the infant Moshe's older sister Miriam, a 9-year-old girl and surely a virgin. Thus, the name of Yeshua's mother recalls this earlier virgin. The other references are to young maidens playing on timbrels, Psalm 68:25, maidens being counted, Proverbs 30:19, and virgins of the royal court, Song of Songs 3:1 and 6:8. In each case, the context requires a young, unmarried woman of good reputation, a virgin. All right. And as far as Isaiah 53, just read it for you, just in case you're unfamiliar. But I think it's 54, but it kind of builds up to it. For before him, he grew up like a young plant, like a root out of dry ground. He was not well formed or especially handsome. We saw him, but his appearance did not attract us. People despised and avoided him, a man of pains, well acquainted with illness, like someone from whom people turned their faces. He was despised, did not value him. We did not value him. In fact, it was our diseases he bore, our pains from which he suffered, yet we regarded him as a punished, stricken, and afflicted by God. And he kind of continues on, but the idea here is this Israel? Which is interesting. How do you answer that? I'm interested. I'm honestly interested, because it seems like Israel is talking here, but also Israel is the subject. Right? It makes sense that it'd be, suffering, this suffering servant that Christianity speaks of. And it's not that Christianity makes this up. It's as far as modern Christianity, but in the Gospels we see it there. So let's keep going.
Alma ever noted as virgin. Virgin is known as Betula. That is a virgin. Alma is never known as a young woman. Christianity changed it. They're like, no, this is a virgin. Now, even if we were to,
and in my Bible, by the way, I don't know if you caught it. It did say woman, right there. Complete Jewish Bible says young woman, but other versions might say virgin. But we already went over that.
Let's say, yeah, it means virgin. Even if you read it linguistically, it doesn't even make sense. It would say a virgin who gave birth, which means it's not implying that she was a virgin at conception. Rather, it implies that she was a virgin when she got married, like everybody else, every other Jewish woman over there. There was a virgin when she got married, and she gave birth. This was the first child. It wouldn't even linguistically make sense that she was a virgin at conception. So this thing makes sense already. It does not make sense from two angles. Furthermore, we have to look at it. What is the context of this verse in Isaiah? And by the way, they always throw out this Isaiah. They throw out this Isaiah 53. They throw out a lot of these verses, not knowing 90% of them. Even when they say this, don't even know the verse before it or after it of when they claim this thing. So, if you're looking at the context of what is this pasuk actually talking about, King Achaz went to Yeshayahu, the prophet, and he says he was nervous. The northern Jewish kingdom has been destroyed. Now, the king was nervous about the southern, Jewish kingdom. Is this going to suffer the same fate as the northern kingdom? So he went to Isaiah and he said, please, prophesy, let me know what's going to happen. So Isaiah went and he prophesied and he says, Ha'alma, which, by the way, correct translation means not a virgin, but it will be the young woman. There's a very difference. So not only did they change the meaning of the word, they also changed the pretext of it. Hey always implies the. The means something more specific. They changed it to an a. A implying something, in the future, possibly don't know. When Isaiah said the young woman means, Ha'alma, the young woman means that me and you both know this woman. It's like you're saying the woman. The woman means that you're implying to know somebody, not a woman. The woman is implying to know somebody. Who is this woman? So you look at chapter 8 of Isaiah, and this is referring to Isaiah's own wife, which means is that she was going to have a child. What was the child's name going to be? The child's name was going to be Emmanuel. What is Emmanuel? This is what the pasuk goes on. Emmanuel means that God is with us. So he is answering already the question that the king asked him. The king asked him, is everything going to be okay? He's saying, yeah, Emmanuel, God is going to be with us, which means you don't have to worry about the other part of the kingdom. There's not going to be any issue with it. God is going to be with us. I'll get you in a second. Let me just finish this thought. And then Isaiah goes on, but when is this going to happen? You look at 2 verses later, in chapter 7, verse 16, it says, when the young boy, when he doesn't know yet between bad and to choose good, which means is before bar mitzvah. Which means is till the age of 13. Which means not only that Isaiah prophesies what is going to happen, but also when it's going to happen. That is the prophecy in the correct words of it. Now, Christianity is known to manipulate the words. This is not a sign of divinity. When you're trying to go and manipulate stuff, that's a sign of deception, not a sign of divinity. It doesn't prove anything. You have a question?
Yeah, I'm just confused. What is all these psukim, what's the connection to Christianity?
Christianity claims that Ha'alma is a virgin, which meaning that one day a virgin is going to give birth, and that is going to be the Messiah.
But what is he talking about?
He's
they
not
say that these psukim mean that a virgin is going to give birth and he's going to give
the Messiah, yeah. And it's not what I just said about the king and nothing related to it to the Mashiach. Yeah. So they go and they just interpret things their own way, and they completely manipulate the actual Torah. Also, let's look at some miraculous claims. So even there was a Catholic, the former president of the Catholic Biblical Association by the name of Raymond Brown.
I'd personally like him to go into that more as far as what Isaiah is talking about there, because of course he is talking about the northern kingdom going into captivity, getting dispersed. And I guess that kind of answers my own question before that. Okay, that's how, since the kingdom split into two, that, is referring to Ephraim being the suffering servant, to go out and spread the Torah. Okay, that could make some logical sense. I can get behind that. But I'll have to do more research on Isaiah. Let me know if you have any answers or thoughts on that. That'd be cool.
He admits regarding the resurrection that no one actually saw the resurrection. No one we know actually saw the resurrection. And in fact, there is conflicting opinions of where he was after the resurrection. Luke and John claim that he was only in Jerusalem. Matthew and Mark said that he was only in the Galilee. 2 very far different places. And in fact, he claims himself, he says himself, I don't know how to answer this. Well, he says, the way that he answers this contradiction, these are non-historical attempts to reconstruct the events never witnessed by their respective authors. I thought this is a divine book. If this is a divine book, why do you have to guess where he went? And why is it conflicting? This is not an idea. This is a very, very outright contradiction in their own book in itself. It's also, when you look at all the miracles that he did. So the disciples said that they saw Jesus walk on the sea of the Galilee. And this is written in Mark 6, chapter 45 to 52, and John 6, chapter 16 to 21. Yet, each text fails to mention who the disciples were. It's imagine I'm coming over to you, and I say, I just ran across the Coney Island beach to whatever it is, to Staten Island. Just ran across it. And be like, you have any witnesses? Yeah, tons of people. Who? Why are you asking questions? It doesn't matter. People saw me, okay? And I also flew. Yeah, people saw me also, okay? Yeah. Who is it? Stop asking questions. It doesn't say anything. Yeah, there were witnesses. Hundreds of people, thousands of people are witnesses, but never mention one witness name. Wouldn't that be a good idea? Then we could validate it ahead. Like your granddaddy said, like it says over here. Did he ever mention anything about that? No, there's no way to validate this information. Also, the same idea. JC fed 5,000 men with 5 loaves of bread. Again, no witness mentioned. But let's say he did do it. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Not lefkaskul, right? If you could even say that. And he did do it. Does that mean that he is God? Let's look at what our Torah has. The prophet Elisha poured a vast amount of oil from a tiny little jug, right? We see this in Kings chapter 4, verse 1 to 7. How he made a very big meal, took a small jug and kept on pouring.
The point of that is because they ask even John the Baptist, right in the beginning of the book of John, are you the prophet? The prophet being mentioned by Moses, who would come after him to teach Torah, be a Torah teacher just like him or even greater. And then they also asked John the Baptist, are you Elijah? So the rabbis were looking for someone who's either the prophet or Elijah, because they knew that he would come again at some point in eschatology. And then this is kind of repeated in the book of John too, is the prophet and Elijah. So who are the 2 people that did bread miracles or multiplied bread? Moses obviously didn't. Obviously it's God every time. But, the manna. And then we have, the stories about tell here with Elijah. feeding the 300 men.
Pouring. Then you go and you see that Elisha, similar to JC, who revived the dead, which JC claimed that they did in Mark chapter 5, verse 35 to 43. And also we have Eliyahu that ascended to heaven, similar like they say JC did in Acts chapter 1, verse 9. Also, Eliyahu we have in Kings chapter 4, verse 18. However, never does the Torah mention, both of them did equal miracles. Never does the Torah mention that Elisha or Eliyahu is God, or even God-like, or even son of God, or anything even remotely close to that. Nothing else other than prophet and holy people. So, they claim, JC produced so much bread miraculously. So did Moshe Rabbeinu. Gave money for a lot longer than JC was able to produce bread. Yet, the Torah doesn't say Moshe was a god. The Torah doesn't say pray to Moshe. The Torah doesn't use any divinity to Moshe other than he was a holy person. And in fact, in the Torah itself, in Devarim, in Deuteronomy, chapter 13, verse 2 to verse 6, it says, Ki yakum bekir b'chanavi. If a prophet goes among you, it says a dreamer, a cholem chalom, someone who's a dreamer, and he's a prophet, implying a fake prophet, that he shows you a sign, and he gives you a sign, he says, you see the sign, you see that I'm a prophet? Now come, let's go worship other gods. The pasuk continues, says, do not pay attention to him, God is testing you. In the Torah itself, it says that if someone comes, and JC for sure was pulling people away from Judaism, he says you don't have...
I'm not pulling away people from Judaism. Everything he did was pointing to the God, the Jewish God, the Hebrew God. I forgot, I'm not supposed to use his name, but and even in the bread miracle, feeding the 5,000, they followed him the next day, and he's showing them that they just want miracles, and he's like, hey, I'm the bread of life. If you eat of me, then you will never die. You'll have eternal life. That's the point he was trying to make. You don't see Elijah or Moses, making these claims. So you're right. He can't be either just a good, prophet. He's either the son of God or he's a liar. And then you have to question, why does he have such power? Do we have demonic people doing these types of miracles? I guess it's possible, but that's kind of the fine line, the saying you got to draw, if this is truthful.
You don't have to keep the Shabbos, you don't have to do this. It's pulling people away. In the Torah itself, it says, don't listen to someone like him. But yet they claim that, the Torah is right, and there's no contradiction between the two. Are you out of your... I'm going to be listing so many verses right now. I'm just going to... Okay, I feel it. Blood pressure rising. Okay. If somebody goes and performs miracles, he can prove nothing else that he can perform miracles. It means absolutely nothing that he is God or any divinity associated with him. The Christians, again, this is very, very important. They claim that the Old Testament, the Torah, is true. Thank you. They also claim that it's accurate and it's also divine. However, they also claim that if there's a conflict between the New Testament and the Old Testament, we go according to the New Testament. Again, you're going to scratch your head like this. Is it true? Is it all together? Is it no conflict?
I disagree so much. That's not how I look at it at all. I use the Old Testament. I think, anytime Jesus is talking or Paul is talking, they're always drawing from the Old Testament. So I think a lot of people misinterpret Paul, what he's saying, because you remember this guy's writing letters. So it's not like, how meticulous the scribes were. And maybe I mentioned this last time, but Paul's just writing letters. Maybe there's a guy who traveled 10 miles, so he's quick. Maybe he's chiseling it down or whatever. How they would transfer that letter, and he'd take it back to his synagogue and be like, "This is what Shaul said." Anything there, you're always like, what was Paul? He wasn't. Why is he talking in grafting terms? He's a tent maker. Maybe he was a tallit maker. And Jesus even talking in garden terms, because he was all drawing from Isaiah and the prophets, and even God, creating a garden terminology. The idea that even the temple was like a picture of the garden with the pomegranate trees and all that. So yeah, definitely the foundation is the Torah and the Tanakh, and the New Testament is just, I feel, a fulfillment of that, not greater than. And as far as it being written down and possibly containing more errors, I would say that yes.
How could there even be? Is it even possible if they're both from divine God, who is divine and knows everything? How is it possible that there could be two conflicting ideas in there? If there's two conflicting ideas, something has got to be wrong. Well, let's look at it. All the Jews claim the Torah is right. All the Christians claim the Torah is right. So now we got two and all the New Testament, just the Christians claim is right. So we got so far 2-1. So when we're having a conflict, we should think, let's go by the majority. Right? You got to go after the rabbin. Why is it? That you're going after, something that came in afterwards, and only part of the population, part of the world, part of the people that believed in this original religion actually believed it to be divine. The Torah says that God judges the people based on the 613 commandments, and for the Jews and for the Gentiles, the 7 Noahide laws. The Christians teaches that God judges the world through the faith of Jesus. Where do you know that from? Like, where is that from? The Christians also claim that he is the Jewish Messiah, Mashiach ben David. Now, there's two very, very important aspects to it, and you can ask this to any Christian. There is absolutely zero answers to this. There is not a single verse in the entire Torah. Let me say that again so the Christians can understand it. There's not a single verse in the entire Old Testament that there mentions a concept of faith in the Messiah for personal salvation. Again, in case I was speaking too fast, as many people claim. There is not a single, not even one, not even a single, not one, uno, nicht uno even, verse in the entire Torah, in the entire Old Testament, that says the concept of faith in the Messiah, Mashiach, Messiah, whatever it is that you believe in, for personal salvation. And let's take it a step further. Also, there is absolutely no concept that the Mashiach, or Mashiach ben David, will die for our sins and save us. Both of them are not in existence in the Torah. Where do you come up? This is by the way, this is a fundamental understanding of their religion. It's not something like, oh, by the way, and they snuck this in. This is the basis of their religion. Absolutely no source in the first divine. If God knew the future, which of course we all know that He did, Christians all claim that He did, He knew that this was going to happen. Wouldn't it have been smart while writing the Torah, dictating to Moshe, whatever it is, put in small letters, I don't care, put it somewhere. Be like, by the way, until the Mashiach comes, we're going to change this whole thing up. Like it's not going to be relevant. And then when you have faith in my son, everything's going to be cool. Don't worry about it. That would have been a smart idea to...
Well, that's not what I believe that the Torah is done away with at all. I think Mashiach was the living Torah, and he came to preach the Torah. And as far as verses, there's got to be some. I don't know any offhand, but like the idea is there. You think about Abraham, before he was Abraham, making the covenant with God, cutting the animals in half, making the blood path. Abraham didn't walk through it, right? And the fire pot did, walked for him. And it's a picture of, I know you can't keep this covenant that you're about to make with me, so I'm going to take the penalty for you. So it's there, and it's like, how was Abraham saved? In the New Testament, he's saved by his faith. It's not keeping Torah that saves you. That is a sign of obedience. When you have true faith, right, you're going to have true obedience. It works together. But there's nothing we can do. If you sin once, right, it's punishable by death. And through the redemption, and then eventually the final redemption when we get back into the land, are all through Mashiach. And it didn't have to tell you that he was coming twice. There's lots of things that we're not told. That would have been great. Like, hey, you're going to go into exile. Hey, you're going to experience the Holocaust. And why wasn't this stuff spelled out? He doesn't tell us everything. And that's for a reason. There's things that we shouldn't know. He told Daniel, hey, seal this up about the end times. They're not going to know. And even in his own Mashiach series, he's like, there's not a lot we know. Not a lot we know that when he's going to come back. We have some ideas. There's some things here, but it doesn't say explicitly. It would be nice if it did, but it doesn't.
Put inside over there. The Torah teaches us that tshuva, tefillah, tzedakah, ma'averin, Torah, gzera. You want to do repentance, you want to change the decree, you got to do three things. Tshuva, repent. Tefillah, you got to pray. And tzedakah, you got to give to charity. And that's what the Torah says you want to do. Christians, forget about that stuff. Just believe. If you believe, you're fine. That's all you have to do.
And that is a great criticism of Christianity. Honestly, that's a great point. The idea, I think, behind that is if you believe truly, you have true faith and true obedience. But it's like you can't preach works because it's legalism. It's like you can't earn your salvation. And no, I guess you can't, right? But that's another topic. But that's how they lined it out. And some are more liberal with that, kind of like hyper grace all the time. But there's always grace. It's always been grace, even in the Old Testament, right? So even David, right? King David, he messed up a lot. He was punished for it, but he did a lot of things that were killing a man, adulterer.
Christians also claim that who's a Satan? Satan is a fallen angel who has free will. This is, again, producing two different powers already to there. And the Torah teaches us that all angels are 100% messengers from God. They don't have their own free will. They don't have the ability to do what they want. It's all directly from God. Some Christians also believe in predestination. Predestination means that you are supposed to do this, this, and this, and this, and this is what's going to happen, which negates the whole idea of free will, which is a problem in its entirety, but we're not going to dwell on it. JC comes along, and he says, these mitzvot, you don't have to worry about these things. It's too difficult. You don't have to worry about it. Now, when you're going and you're preaching to people a new religion, and you're saying it's a very easy religion, that's a very good way to buy someone into the religion. So you don't have to do much. This is what you have to do, which is just have belief and faith in me, and that's about it. So when you're preaching an easy religion like that, he should have a lot of followers. And it makes sense. We see that I have a lot of followers right now. But then it gives us a question. The question is that when he came out with this new idea, this new religion, he didn't have a lot of followers. It was a friends and family plan only. Like, he had only people that were associated very close to him.
Yeah, his family didn't really believe in him, like his brothers. And it wasn't an easy religion because he lost a lot of disciples when he said, and it was somewhere in John, early in John, like chapter 6 or 7, where he's like, essentially you have to die. You have to become like me. He says, I'm going to die. And you have to bear up like that cross just like me. And he's saying that this is going to be hard. You have to die to yourself. Just like Yeshua died on the cross, you have to die to yourself to be set apart and to live fully for God. So it wasn't easy. A lot of people followed him at the start. Because why? They were always waiting for a Mashiach. The Jews always looking for a savior. So there's always those easy converts. The rabbis are following him around too. They're keeping an eye on him, keeping him in check, asking him tough questions, test him out, see if he really is the Messiah. And in a lot of ways, the rabbis thought that he would come to the temple, that he would maybe even become a rabbi in the temple first, but not like an outsider from the Galilee. That was weird to them, so they didn't trust it. So, and later on into his ministry, 3 years, a lot of them started falling off. Even Peter, denied him 3 times, and then he came back, So I don't think it was easy at all. It wasn't an easy religion, but we've made it an easy religion in Christianity today, and that is a problem for sure.
Nobody else, not even one sage, one chacham that went and said, you know what? Yeah, he's right. Let's follow this religion. Nobody claimed for.
I don't know if they're real, but like Nicodemus, is he an actual rabbi? There was people, the rabbis that's quoted in the New Testament that maybe didn't believe, but seemed to show interest. We're like, let's not condemn him, until we hear the matter out, test it.
His majority of his own people rejected it. If it's an easy religion, which means it's an easy sell, then how come he couldn't sell anybody?
Well, every writer of the New Testament was Jewish, maybe except for Luke. He might have been a Gentile. Paul was a rabbi, right? When Paul spoke, it says 3,000 Jews in Jerusalem believed. So there's lots of accounts of Jewish people believing. And he didn't go, maybe he went to the Decapolis a few times, but mainly he was staying in, the Galilee, traveling for the feast days, going to Jerusalem, back and forth, and a lot of these accounts weren't necessarily like, where did he go and exactly which road did he take and which disciples were with him. They were more focused on, the content and the spiritual food, and that's and not so much, it's not like Josephus, writing a historical account. That wasn't the goal, and I think that was on purpose.
How come? The answer is because he made it up. It's all 100% fake. It's all 100% false. When people came in there, and he was preaching his stuff, and people came to him and says, can you show me a sign? So it says in Matthew.
And as far as like the Synoptic Gospels, 3 different writers, and John tell a lot of the same stories, right? And maybe they wrote these well after, but they do a pretty good job of lining up with each other. Yeah, there's inconsistencies, but it's like that. What's that game where you whisper something down the line, and by the end somebody's got it a little messed up? Doesn't mean that the original statement wasn't true, but I think it's been very well preserved. Not as well preserved as the Tanakh, I would say, and we have the Dead Sea Scrolls to compare that with and test it out.
Matthew chapter 12, verse 39. Only but an evil and an adulterous generation would demand a miraculous sign. That's like saying something like, yeah, I could fly. Can you show me? Stop being such an adulterous person. You don't believe in me? You don't have faith in me? Be like, I don't know, you just came over to me, told me that you're a son of God. Can you at least show me why? Be like, a bunch of adulterers religion. That's not a sane response. If you're claiming something, then you have to bring some foundation to it, some fact to it. At least bring some foundation from the Torah from it, at least something, but nothing. It wasn't until after his death that really, Christianity came to explode. Yeah, it's when it hit the Big Bang. A guy by the name of Shaul, who later called himself Paul, he went and he tried to get a lot of Jews to go to Christianity. It wasn't working. Changed his tactic, right? When a business model is not working, got to change it. He changed the business model. He went and he started getting all the Gentile people into the...
That's not true. He originally started following the apostles after spending 3 years in Arabia after his conversion. But that's why God chose him. He was chosen to speak to the diaspora, the synagogues that were scattered across, what would have been the Greek Empire at one point. Those in exile, like in Isaiah, talking about Ephraim being scattered, the lost sheep. That was his mission. Peter, the rest of the apostles, mainly stayed in Jerusalem and the Galilee, and even Jesus predicted that the temple would be destroyed in 70 AD. So they wanted to get the message out and about because they knew that calamity was coming to Jerusalem. So even if people believed in Jerusalem, they were going to die. And if their faith was good, and this is a harsh reality, something that I don't really want to say because it's kind of mean, but like if you really should believe in God was on your side, why would he allow the temple to be destroyed? I forget what his name was, Eleazar, even at Masada. And some of the things he said right before the Romans broke through the walls and they all committed suicide was something that God was not on our side, and we're being punished for not having love in our hearts for our own people. The Romans were surrounding the walls of Jerusalem. There was infighting. The Medians and different sects were all just warring amongst themselves, and we focused on the armies outside the wall, just eating each other, killing babies, murdering. It's not a people acting again for the Torah, the law of love.
Into the religion. And by the way, that is why, and we spoke about this in Is Christianity Avodah Zarah, this is why you have many of the holidays of Christianity has very, very strongly rooted in idolatrous rituals, which is why you can't participate in any of them. You can't do it. It's all dealt with 100%.
Agreed. Don't celebrate any of the holidays. I stick to the Moedim, the feast days, because they're not the Jewish feast days, they're God's feast days.
Idolatry. So, and that is why we have this type of thing. Now, again, we spoke about this. Any true religion doesn't have to go and bring people in there. It doesn't have. If you have the Word of God, your message is not to take people from other religions and bring in their religion also into your religion. Like, yeah, let's just bring it in. It's a number game, baby. We're got to get numbers, and you're just getting numbers. That's not a sign of a true religion.
Yeah, 100% agree. And a lot of that started with Constantine trying to get peace in his empire, mixing, Mithras worship, Christianity, changing the Sabbath to Sunday, little things like that, trying to mix. Okay, Christmas. Like historically, even like Christians, like no one believes that he was born on Christmas. They just want to mix it with the dying, resurrecting sun god.
Religion. There's something also very, very interesting. If you look at the Christianity and its history, Jesus was not always God. Kind of, sort of happened a few hundred years after he died. What happened is that there were a group of people called the Arians. This was led by an Egyptian priest by the name of Arius. He lived from 318 to 355 Common Era. He and his entire following did not believe that Jesus was God. They believed that he was a prophet. And this was actually a very, very dominant form of Christianity in Spain. It was very dominant. However, the Greek Christians, they were conflicting. They had machloket over there. They claimed that, no, JC was a god. And there was an argument between them two. This was the battle over the status of JC, Jesus. This all changed in the year 325 Common Era when the pagan Roman Emperor Constantine decided to take Christianity as the official religion. And when he decided he's going to take this as official religion, he had to do something. Now, we can have an idea like, is the leader, the founder, a god or is he not a god? This is a very, very conflicting idea. So they had to make a maskana, they had to pass in what is going to be. Is he a god or is he not a god? So what he did was decided to go by a vote. Problem is that Constantine, he supported the deification of Jesus. He wanted Jesus to be God. Why? Because his entire population all believed in human-like that became gods. Like they believed they were pagans. And he wanted to introduce them, so he had to, spice it up a little bit, make it more to their taste. So what he did was, he excluded all the Arian bishops. All the people that believed that he was just a prophet, that was not God, so no, he didn't get an invitation. The other people, they came in, and the final ruling, the final verdict was 218 to 2 for divine Jesus. And that's when JC became God. He was elected, all of a sudden he became God. So which means is, for over 200 years, Christianity is not fully practicing that JC is God. And all of a sudden now he turns into God. Now, that is, a pretty big deal, Like, if you're stating a religion and you're not sure if this is God or this is not God, that is a very, very fundamental problem in the religion itself. The Holy Spirit in its entirety was added 56 years after that in the Council of Constantinople. This was like something that involved, afterwards. But in any case, I feel we've been enough. And by the way, this was done at the count. This was original where Jesus became became a god. This was done at the Council of Nicaea. Okay, so now let's look at some contradictions. Because contradictions, if they claim, again, we are disproving Christianity from their own words, not from our words, from their own words. The Christians teach that the Torah is temporary until Jesus came and fulfilled the laws. And after they fulfill the laws, it's done. We don't have to deal with it. We don't have to deal with the Torah anymore. Let us look at some verses from the Torah. In Divinity, chapter 28, verse 46. It says over there that it's going to be a sign and a wonder for you forever. Olam is forever, for eternity. Those are the translations of the word.
Agreed.
In Ezekiel, chapter 37, verse 25, it says also, and their children and children's children forever. Olam. Some of the verses I'm not going to read in Hebrew just so that people don't doze off, because when you hear Hebrew, get to Neverland. But, so I'll read just the English, but I'll tell you exactly where the source for it, so you could go and look it up. Deuteronomy, chapter 13, verse 1. את כל הדבר אשר אנוכי מצווה אתכם אותו תשמרו לעשות לא תוסף עליו ולא תגרע ממנו. Everything that I command you, God says, shall be carefully to do it. You shall be careful that you should do it. You shall neither add to it nor subtract to it. Again, don't add or don't subtract from the Torah that I am giving you. It would have been a good idea to put in a continuation to that verse until Jesus comes, Messiah comes, and then you don't have to do it anymore. But yeah, it doesn't say that anywhere in the Torah. Genesis chapter 17, verse 9. I'll give you and your children. You'll keep it my covenant for throughout all generations. Exodus chapter 31 verse 16. You'll keep the Sabbath for an everlasting covenant. Everlasting, not till something. Everlasting means forever, not until the Mashiach comes. Dvarim chapter 11 verse 1. You shall love your God, you shall keep his charge and his statutes and his ordinances and his commandments all the days, forever. Never here does it mention anything until, let's do one more. Devarim, chapter 28, verse 46. And there should be a sign and a wonder upon you and upon your offspring forever. Additional sources, we're not going to quote all the verses. Devarim, chapter 29, verse 28. Tehillim, Psalms, chapter 111, verse 7 to 9. Kings, chapter 17, verse 37. Ezekiel, chapter 37, verse 24 through 25. And I could go on and on and on. And how many verses does it say that the Torah is not going to be replaced? The laws that you have to keep are going to be forever. How do the Christians answer this? They don't. Even in the New Testament itself, JC, Jesus says himself in Matthew chapter 5, verse 17 to verse 19, do not think that I came to destroy the law of the prophets. That I'm quoting. Did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. Till heaven and earth pass away, one word will by no means pass from the law until it's all fulfilled. Whoever breaks even the least of these commandments, referring to the Torah, is considered least in the kingdom of heaven. So in their Old Testament, says that you have to keep the Torah. I mean, this becomes a big problem because Jesus himself didn't keep the Torah. He actually, he told his followers they don't have to keep Shabbos. He says, but it says in the Torah you have to keep Shabbos. I'm the Lord of the Shabbos. He goes and he changes the entire things for his thing. But if the Torah is true,
he was just saying that he could work on the Sabbath just because God had always been working on the Sabbath. Just like Levites do their work on the Sabbath, healing on the Sabbath is okay because its love is greater than the Sabbath. The rabbis would try to catch him in a corner for making a lame man walk. He wasn't saying that you don't have to keep Sabbath. He was just saying that the point of the Sabbath is is love. The whole point of the Torah is love. So there's greater commands to love than just to rest. It's the whole point of his parable of the Samaritan who, there's the wounded man and passing through the road to Samaria, probably the Levite and the rabbi, whoever, the priest, were going to the temple for probably a pilgrim feast day, and they didn't want to touch this guy. He might have been dead. They want to help him out because, then they wouldn't be able to keep the feast. They would be unclean. So it's showing that the Samaritan man, helped this traveler who had been robbed and beat up, whereas the rabbi and the Levite wouldn't. Showing that the love is more important than ritual purity.
why is Sunday your holy day? What happened to the Sabbath? Okay, the Seventh-day Adventists actually go keep the Sabbath. The majority of the Christianity, they move it to Sunday. They got to keep their bases, right? And Muslims were like, we can't do the same thing as everybody else. Let's do it to Friday. So they move it to Friday. The Jews keep Shabbos, and the Christians keep Sunday. But if the Torah is true, where in the Torah says holy day is going to be Saturday until Mashiach comes? We're going to move it one day over to Sunday. Nowhere. Where did they get that from? If you believe it, why do you eat pig? How is pork kosher? If you believe in the Torah, then where are all these laws? Why don't you keep on Shana Yom Kippur? It says straight out of the Torah. So, again, no answers.
Yeah, there's no answers because they should be keeping Torah. And nowhere does Yeshua say not to keep Torah. And nowhere does his apostles and the writers of the New Testament say not to keep Torah. That's all inserted into the text.
Well, the answer is they fulfilled it. Where did he fulfill it? There's absolutely zero source for anything that they say. Also, we have to know that God does not change his mind.
Even that word fulfilled means he did all that the Torah required. He was perfect in every way. Unlike any other man, he was actually perfect. He kept the Torah 100% because God's law is eternal.
It can't be like, okay, the Jews were until a certain point, then God changed his mind. In Malachi, chapter 3, verse 6, Ki ani Hashem lo shaniti, v'atem bnei Yaakov lo kalitem. For I, God, have not changed, and you, the sons of Jacob, have not reached the end. You'll never be destroyed. Very, very straight out says that I am not going to change. And the Torah says many, many times that not only is the laws have to be kept until the end of times, the Jewish nation will never, never be replaced. In Genesis chapter 17, verse 7, God says, I establish my covenant between me and you, speaking to Abraham, and between your seed after you for generations and generations to come forever. Brit olam, an everlasting covenant. Leviticus chapter 26, verse 44. The Torah says, even when you go into exile, when you're going to be in the land of your enemies, lo me'astim v'lo ga'altim l'chalotam. I will not despise them, nor I will reject them to destroy them. Referring to the Jewish nation. So the Christians can't claim, well, yeah, God, you weren't listening to God, and then God changed it to the Christianity. It says straight out in the Torah that it's never going to happen. How do you answer that? Oh, then again, it goes on, and I'll remember them for a covenant made forever. Isaiah chapter 55, verse.
Yeah, well, even in Judaism, you can convert, right? You can become part of Israel, and that's the whole idea of Paul talking about grafting in Romans, is that those who bloodline say they're Israel, but actually aren't acting in faith and keeping the Torah, aren't truly Israel, and those who are doing it by faith, even though they may not be bloodline, are grafted into the good olive tree, which is, you found all these ideas, these agricultural terms all throughout the Old Testament, are grafted into that, grafted into Israel through Messiah, with his redemption, and even the divorced northern kingdom being able to be regrafted back in, even because of their sin, their disobedience, not keeping the feast days, serving other gods. They had divorced themselves. So there needed to be redemption. There needed to be a redeemer. That's what Mashiach is all about. Not just bringing about the final redemption, bringing us back in the land, the physical thing, but also spiritual redemption.
Verse 54, sorry, it's Isaiah chapter 54, verse 10. My kindness shall not depart from you, and neither shall the covenant of my peace be ever removed. Isaiah chapter 59, verse 21. Lo yemushu mipicha u'mipi zaracha u'mipi zera zaracha amar Hashem me'ata v'ad olam. God says that my Torah is never going to be removed, not from your mouth, not from your children's mouth. Forever and ever, the Torah is always going to be removed. Now, if the Torah is going to be null and void, if it's not going to be, there's going to be, why did God say, give this promise that it's going to stay for eternity? Again, Leviticus chapter 26, verse 44, I will not despise them, nor I will reject them, nor I will annihilate them. Again and again, numerous verses in the Torah stating specifically that the Torah will never be changed, that the Jewish nation will never be replaced. So how, in a sane person's mind that reads the Old Testament, the Torah, can say, with just forget about, I'm not learning something difficult over here. It's saying it straight out, not once, not twice, but tens of times. It says it again and again in the Torah. The gospel.
You can't get around it. He's 100% right.
Gospels also, this is where you get a little bit of a Jewy brain. The Gospels also claim that the Romans killed Jesus. But then they sort of shift the blames towards the Jews. And they say, no, the Jews really killed. That's why there was a lot of anti-Semitism, because they claim the Jews also are, in fact, killed Jesus. Now, if the purpose of Jesus coming into this world was a suicide mission, thank you, and the mission was to go and die for people's sin so that he can go and be a salvation to everybody else. So if the Jews were involved, which they weren't, but if they were involved, which again they weren't, but even if you want to say they were involved, aren't they just fulfilling God's will? It's like, I'm going to punish you for fulfilling God's will. I'm like, but isn't that what would have happened if Jesus would have died from old age? Like, imagine Jesus lived on to, and he died at his old age. It's like the entire Christianity would have been null and void. He wouldn't have been murdered for his sins, for anybody else's sins. So the entire thing was that. So they came anti-Semitic. They used anti-Semitism against the Jews. Why? For something that was supposed to happen to Jesus, but because we were involved in it, which again we weren't, then they go and they claim that that we have it's our problem, it's our fault. Furthermore, in Deuteronomy chapter 28.
That's a dumb claim, because it's all our fault. We all killed him. Anyone who had ever sinned has nailed Jesus to the cross. You can't blame the Jews, the Romans. It's all of us collectively. There's only one reason he had to come. It's because we're all sinners, and no one is perfect, no matter how legalistic and how well you keep the Torah. You're always going to mess up somewhere.
Verse 15 to verse 68, it brings a whole long list of curses that if the Jewish people do not follow God's command, God's Torah, there's going to be plenty of problems that are going to come onto you. So how could somebody come and say you don't have to do the laws anymore? It says in the Torah that if you don't do these laws, you're going to go through so many problems in your life. And it's list and list and list of it. I'll tell you something really cool. This is something that I was thinking if I should say it now or I should give a separate class about Torah codes. But maybe instead of giving a separate class, I'll just throw it in a bunch of different classes. This is proof of how you see the divinity of the Torah. It says in Divinity, and this is, by the way, Rabbi Yossi Mizrahi brings it down, Rabbi Yaron Rubin also brings it down. There's many people bring down also by Matisyahu Glazerson, the Torah codes. The Torah codes in this particular one, such a beautiful one. Oh, it's amazing. In Divinity, in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 26 and verse 27. It says, "V'hefitz Hashem etchem ba'amim," and God will scatter you amongst the people. And the pasuk goes on, and it says that you'll remain few in number among the nations, which Hashem will lead you, and there you'll worship gods of wood and stone. And by the way, Rashi referring to the same idea in Divinity, different pasuk in chapter 64, saying, what does this mean? This doesn't mean that the Jews are actually be worshiping these gods, but actually they're going to be in the power of people that worship these gods. Gods of the wood and gods of the stone. So what is gods of the wood and gods of the stone that the pasuk is referring to over here?
Money.
Gods of the wood is referring to Christianity. And Maimonides, Rambam brings us down. Wood is known as a cross. That's why they do knock on wood. Knock on wood is remembering waking up Jesus so that he can save him. Right? So the wood is resemblance of the cross. What's the god of the stone? God of the stone is Mecca. Where do the Islams go and pray? They go play by the stone of Mecca. They go on the roundabout about it. The Torah said this before Christianity came out and before Islam came out. It says, if you're not going to pay attention to my Torah, you're not going to follow laws, I will scatter you. We're amongst people that worship the God of the wood and God of the stone. God of the wood is Christianity. This is already a prophecy. But let's take it one step further. Now, first I have to explain what Torah codes is. Torah codes is that...
Never heard that before. I thought it was money because, paper is made from wood and coins are made from stones, but... You don't worship money. But that's interesting. And even the worshiping of the cross has become just such a distorted symbol, it's in Christianity. And I don't wear a cross. I'll be more likely to wear the Star of David or menorah than the cross. I don't have it anywhere in my house. So I could get behind him on that because it has become a symbol of the Catholic Church and everything I disagree with so much. But, stone being Mecca, or the Dome of the Rock. Interesting.
You have a pasuk, or a few psukim, and with an equal mathematical skip, which means it can't be that you say okay, I have this pasuk, and if you take the two words here, you take 3 letters, and then you skip 4 letters, and then you skip 6 letters, 7 letters, it says my name. That doesn't count as anything. It just says you're just doing mumbo jumbo. But if you're able to somehow prove that there's equal mathematical skip, which means every 5 letters spell out a different word. That says something. Every 50 letters spell out another word. That says something. So you take this pasuk, you start from the hey. You start from the hey behepitz. You count 50 letters, and you go and you reach echaf. You count another 50 letters, you reach amen. Spells out Mecca. In the pasuk, that it says, in these 2 psukim, that says that if you don't follow God in the Torah, you will go and you'll be under the power of people that worship the gods of the wood and the gods of the stone. Says already in there, straight out Mecca. An equal mathematical skip of exactly 50 letters between each word. And it goes on and it continues. You take the yud from the hefitz, you count 50 letters, it's a shin. You count another 50 letters, it's a vav. Yeshu. Yeshu is known as JC, you have over there exactly referring to the God of the wood and the God of the stone. Not only is the prophecy mentioned in here, but furthermore, even an equal mathematical skip to tell you exactly what they worship and the basis of their foundation of their worship. Mic drop is what I say to that. And water spill. Thank you. Do you even have anything remotely close to this in the New Testament? In the Quran? And any other heebie-jeebie fake religion out there? Is there anything that has it? This is already a sign of divinity, already a sign of something that is outside of the realm of a human being is able to come and produce something like this.
You can't have the thing with the letters in other languages, only in Hebrew?
In Lashon HaKodesh, you can do it in any language you want, but it only means something if you do it something that's that. Which means so in order to understand the Torah codes, it's not only that you found equal mathematical skip. There's something interesting from the Shoah.
So it's my belief that, the Tanakh is God's word, whereas the New Testament is people writing about the fulfillment of God's word through Jesus. And these are letters. These are not scholars. Peter was a fisherman. Paul was. He was a scholar. He was a rabbinic scholar, but still he was just writing letters to churches. He was going out there, meeting at synagogues, but speaking to the people, writing letters from prison. Good letters, good content, but not to be akin with, stuff like this, Torah codes, which I have heard of that before.
Which maybe we'll bring a different time, the Holocaust. It's specifically where it becomes beautiful and becomes so divine is not only that there's equal mathematical skip in something that is random pasukim, but where the pasuk, the verse itself, speaks about what the mathematical skip is also dealing with, like this one over here, and the Shoah also deal with that. Okay. Just going to warn you guys, we're going to go a little bit over, so if anybody needs to leave, if it goes too late, by all means, you can go. I got to finish this. There's no way I can do part 1 and part 2. I'm going to get sore already. I can feel it. Let's look at some contradictions. In Mark chapter 2, verse 25 to 26, it says, by King David's time, Abiathar was the high priest. However, in Shmuel, chapter 21, verse 2, it says, Achimelech was the Kohen Gadol. Which one was it? Was it both? Was it a different timeline? Another contradiction. In Luke chapter 14, verse 26, let me quote, if any man come to me and hate not his father and mother and wife and children and brethren and sisters, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. Kind of saying you got to hate everybody else in order to be my disciple. Again, I'm stretching it out a little bit, but that's the idea behind it. The Torah commands us...
That's not what it's saying. It's setting yourself apart. It's like, even in the end of days, it talks about your brothers hating you, your friends and family hating you. Are you going to distort what you believe to keep that love going? That's not why we're here. We're here for love God, then your neighbor. One, then two. Still love them, but if they come between you and God, you must hate them. If they aren't part of the body, the family, your true family should be believers, the body, Torah keepers, those in Judaism. Even I'm sure, like, if people reject Judaism, reject God, and you see that in Muslim culture, like, they're not even considered part of the family anymore. It's that kind of belief. You still love them, but and obviously Islam takes it way too far, but there's just a concept there.
Straight out, you have to honor your father and your mother. Oh yeah, wait a minute, it's part of the 10 Commandments. And then Jesus comes over here and says, if you don't hate your father and mother, then you cannot be my disciple. The missionaries, the people that answer, what do they claim? They claim, no. Compared to the love that you have for Jesus, it's almost like hate. If you hate your family compared to the love of that. No. Do you ever... I love you so much, my darling wife, that I hate my parents. Do you ever say that? What normal person, what type of idea, emotions are that? You okay there? I'm sorry. Okay. So, and in fact, this is a very cultish idea that you're dealing with. Okay. I take that as compliments, by the way. It's okay.
Yeah,
so, yeah. So, okay. Matthew chapter 8, verse 21 through 23. The disciples go and say unto him, Lord, speaking about Jesus, Lord, let me go and bury my father, they tell him. And he says, follow me, don't worry about it. Let the dead bury the dead. In Deuteronomy, chapter 21, verse 23, we said that the dead have to be buried the same day. What is Jesus changing everything over here? It's completely refuting everything that says from the Torah. Besides the fact that you have different versions of the New Testament. How many...
Didn't Abram leave his father in Haran?
different versions, over 150,000 different variant readings of the Christian Bible. In case you didn't hear me, that is over 150,000 different variant readings of the Christian Bible. So, in 1979, a modern Christian apologist by the name of Josh McDowell published a book called In Defense of Christianity. It actually published a book in defense of Christianity. It's called Evidence That Demands a Verdict. He claims over there, and he concluded, I don't know if he researched all this 150,000, but he concluded that only, underlining the word, only 400 of the 150,000 varied readings of the Bible cause a doubt upon the textual meaning. And then he goes on, only 50 of these were of great significance. Did he just say only 50 of these were great significance? Is this a divine religion or not? You're telling me there's 50 great significant problems that we're not sure what it means over here, and you're claiming this is a divine religion? You're going to the Torah, we're not going to say, yeah, we're not sure what this means over here. It could be, there's about another 3 different versions of the Torah, and there might be one. No, the Torah, we know exactly what it, and by the way, the Torah is a lot older than the Christianity and the New Testament. And yet, we don't have any questions on what it says in the Torah. We have exactly the way that it was since we got it. Torah Shabbat, I'm talking about the written word. All right, so if that's a problem in itself, we started having a lot of conflicts between the Torah and the New Testament. But we don't have to go that far. There's plenty of conflicts between the New Testament among the New Testament itself. Let's go through a few of their conflicting issues. In the city where Mary, the mother of Jesus, and her husband lived, where were they living before Jesus was born? So in Luke chapter 1, verse 26, and also chapter 2, verse 4, it says in Nazareth. In Matthew chapter 2, verse 1, it says in Bethlehem. 2 different places. Did they have a country house that we're not aware of? Did they have 2 houses? What is going on over here? Either, it's a huge contradiction. Either they lived here or they lived over there. And what...
They're from Nazareth, and Herod required a census. So what's the best time to do that? Probably on a feast day. The reason that they stayed in Bethlehem, kind of outside the city of Jerusalem, Bethlehem was really close to Jerusalem, and even in a barn, is because she had been ritually unclean. She's about to give birth. So they were trying to keep her away from anyone else who might come unclean, that wouldn't be able to participate in the feast day. And then they stayed in Bethlehem, probably with family, for a good 2 years. And then we have the murdering of innocents, which isn't recorded in Josephus, but there was a lot going on at the time. Herod the Great, right before his death, was doing a lot of crazy different things. He had herded a bunch of significant leaders, religious leaders, in this Colosseum or whatever, and was going to murder them all so that all the Jews would mourn on the day of his death, because he knew that all the Jews were going to rejoice when he died. So it could have been that the slaughter of the innocents of Bethlehem. But Bethlehem probably wasn't a very big town. You would think, it's probably like 200, 300 kids under 2, but it might have been 10, 15, 150. And then they were told to run away to Egypt. And then when he came back, he went back up to Galilee, to Nazareth.
Boggles my mind when we're going to read all these contradictions. Did the Gospels, when they were writing, did they not check the other Gospels to try to collaborate the story a little bit? In what year was Jesus born? That's a pretty big idea, right? That you would think they would know, especially since the focus of the entire calendar is on that. They celebrate that. Matthew chapter 2, verse 1, no later than 4 BCE. This I have to actually explain. According to Matthew, Jesus was born during the reign of King Herod. King Herod died in 4 BCE, which means that Jesus must have been born before 4 BCE. And that's in Matthew. In Luke chapter 2, verse 1 through 6, it says that he was born in 6 Common Era. That is not the same year, if you know math. Where do they claim? They claim that he was born in the year of the Roman census. The Roman census, we know, happened in 6 Common Era. So where was it? Was it 4 BCE? Was it 6 CE? That is a huge contradiction. This is a divine book you're selling to me, and you don't know when he was born? Not only you're not telling me you don't know, you give me 2 conflicting dates.
No, the history doesn't really even have great ideas on when. Even with Josephus, there's a lot of conflicting writers at that time. No one could really agree. Did Herod die at that time? Was it Herod the Great? There's lots of Herods. And when was Jesus born? So I think it was shrouded in mystery for a reason, just to throw us off a little bit, because a lot of end times prophecies and eschatology is going to fit into that. So keeping it kind of the waters muddied is I think, the whole plan of God.
How long after Jesus was born did Joseph and Mary remain in Bethlehem? Matthew says 2 years. Luke says 40 days. Was there a Roman census that affected Joseph and Mary? I'm not going to say all the locations of it, but if you want, you can message me. I'll send it to you. Luke says. So again, the question was there a Roman census that affected Joseph and Mary? Luke, yes. Matthew, no. After Judas betrayed Jesus, how did he die? Acts chapter 1, verse 15. His stomach burst open. Matthew chapter 27, verse 5. He hung himself. I have a few questions.
Can it be both?
Dear Father, did he burst open and then he hung himself? Did he hung himself and then he cut up the slice open? Like, how do you even collaborate this contradiction? Did Judas repent before he died? Acts, no. Matthew, yes. Which day was Jesus crucified? John chapter 13, verse 9, also verse 29, also chapter 18, verse 28, and also chapter 19, verse 14, on the 14th of Nisan. They claim that he was the Karban Pesach, which is given on the 14th of Nisan. However, in Mark chapter 14, verse 17, also Luke chapter 22, verse 14, also Matthew chapter 2, verse 20, kind of, majority against one over here, they claim the 15th of Nisan, that the Last Supper was the Seder. So one claimed that it's 2 different days. He can't have died twice before his even own resurrection. It's pure contradiction that they have absolutely no answer to it. What time was Jesus crucified? The 3rd hour according to Mark, the 6th hour according to John. Did the Roman soldiers guard Jesus' tomb? According to John chapter 20, verse 1, no. According to Matthew chapter 28, verse 4, yes. The stories go on and on, are full of inconsistencies. And by the way, there's plenty of more. There's books written out on these inconsistencies out there. How can you claim divinity with so many? These are not inconsistencies where maybe you could say it means something else. This is straight out inconsistencies. How can you even begin to claim that something like this is divine? They even have plain and straight out copying mistakes. In Genesis chapter 46, verse 26, it says Yaakov went to Egypt. Who knows? How many nefashot? How many people went with Yaakov to Egypt? 70. Very good. What does the New Testament say in Acts chapter 7, verse 14? 75. How do you get 75 from 70? you write, you see, you're just copying and pasting. How do you mess up copying and pasting? I don't understand. So then they claim, no, there's answer to it. There was Menashe and Ephraim, children and grandchildren, which doesn't make sense, not logically, not the time-wise. He didn't have his grandchildren. It just makes absolutely no sense at the time. However, they claim, well, the Septuagint, the Septuagint, so the Greek translation of the Torah, says 75. It says there 75. You look in Genesis chapter 46, verse 26 to verse 27. It says 75. So maybe the Torah is wrong. The problem is that we can't rely on Septuagint because the Christians are known to manipulate and deceive those old documents. They actually change things. How do we know that they changed them? They've sort of left a little bit of a trail in this particular one, because it doesn't say in only that place that Yaakov came in with 70 souls. It also says in Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 22. So the Christians changed the Genesis one to 75, but they forgot to change the one in Deuteronomy, that's chapter 70. So that means the Septuagint itself, according to their variants, is also contradicting to it. Again, the New Testament says the Ma'aras HaMachpelah is in Shechem. Everybody that went and learned basic Chumash knows. By the way, it says this in Acts chapter 7, verse 15 and verse 16. We all know that it's in Hebron, not in Shechem. People go and visit in Hebron the Ma'arat HaMachpelah. The New Testament also says that Abraham purchased the grave from Shechem, the grave in Shechem from Hamor. That's also incorrect. You read straight out in the Chumash. It's from Ephron in Hebron. So again, there is many contradictions. I'm not even going to bring about this because we spoke at length, disproving that JC cannot be the Messiah. The difference in the conflicting lineages in the different books on who JC's ancestors were. We have time for. Let me touch upon this very, very briefly. I didn't have time to speak about this in the men's class. The Gospels of Mark and Matthew, they claim that there was some sort of Jewish trial of Jesus. In Matthew chapter 26, verse 63 through 65, it says in Sanhedrin, they tried Jesus for the Jewish capital offense of blasphemy. And Jesus confessed. He confessed. But what his confession was? His confession was that he was the Son of God. And they judged him, according to the law, according to the New Testament, they judged him based only on his confession. Now, you have to know some basic laws of Judaism where this is all going to be thrown completely out the window. We need testimony. We need witnesses. We need Eidim. So the New Testament says there were witnesses, but the testimony was dismissed. And then Mark and Matthew and John go on and say that the Sanhedrin sentenced Jesus to death, but they could not execute criminals. So they had to go and they transfer them to the Romans. How this is wrong on every single level possible. First of all, they claimed that Jesus, what was the blasphemy? That he claimed that him to be the anointed one, the Mashiach, the Son of God. That doesn't constitute blasphemy according to the Torah. Blasphemy means that you're cursing God. Nowhere in the New Testament says that he cursed God, which means he cannot be liable for anything for blasphemy if he did not even do any of those sins. Furthermore, this is not a sin on the Jewish law. It's a sin it's not a sin. It's a violation, offense under the Roman law when you're claiming to be a Messianic king. That's obviously going to conflict with the Roman authorities. So there is no indication in this idea that Jesus violated the Jewish law in this idea. Furthermore, the New Testament constantly blames the Pharisees, the Orthodox Jewish people. They're being too strict. Oh, you're following the law too good. You're doing too good. Then the Sanhedrin, the most prestigious institution of the Jewish law system, would for sure follow the Jewish law. Now, the New Testament says that the Sanhedrin sat out. They went and they met in the private residence of the high priest. According to the Jewish law, any criminal court, any criminal procedure that's running has to be in the temple. It cannot be outside the temple precinct. So which means according to your own testimony, it's not true. It doesn't make sense according to our laws. A Jewish person is also, if a person goes and says he did something wrong, we don't convict him based on his testimony. We need to have two witnesses. Those witnesses have to go and have to warn the person. The person accepts the warning and says, no, I'm not going to do it, and he violates it, then he's liable to the offense, whatever that he did. This one has absolutely nothing to do with that. And then furthermore, they said that the Jewish people the Sanhedrin couldn't execute people. They themselves claim in Mark chapter 14, no, it's a different one. They claim in Acts chapter 6, verse 12 and 15, that the Jewish Sanhedrin went and convicted and executed Stephen, a follower of Jesus. So at one point you're telling me that they can't execute, another point you're telling me that they can't execute.
You're running the same problem with the story of the adulterous woman, and there were stonings all the time, and it's like, who do you blame? It's like everyone casts a stone. It's not they weren't executing somebody. It's like they wanted something a little more, like without a stoning. They didn't want to make a martyr of him, and they wanted to put him in Roman hands. But yeah, the problem with, if you read Josephus, and even the Hasmonean dynasty building up to this, it's like the line of Zadok had been, it was more political. Herod the Great was appointing high priests for, that aligned with his views, and even into, the line of, Judah Maccabee and all that, kind of holding the kingship and the priesthood at the same time, led to some bending and meeting in secret like this to keep their power. They care less about the Messiah coming and more about holding their power and reign on the temple and controlling the land.
And they also bring in John chapter 8 verse 2 that a woman was caught in the very act of adultery, was about to be executed before Jesus came and supposedly intervened and saved her. And then it also says in Mark chapter 6 verse 27 that King Herod, the king of the Jews, executed John the Baptist. So I understand, you tell me you can't execute, but you can't execute. These are so much conflicting ideas in there. How? I don't understand.
It was a different tetrarch. So there's four. The tetrarch is four leaders. So we had Herod, who could have executed Jesus if he wanted to, because he lived east of the Jordan, controlling those lands. Whereas it was a different, where Jerusalem was, and even in Galilee was run by Herod the Tetrarch, and you had the Decapolis, and there was these different areas with different rules, where Rome was more in control. I forget what the leadership there was considered, but in Jerusalem especially was with the fortress of Antonia. There was a garrison there. They kept a close watch on the temple because they knew it was such a pivotal point in 70 AD as a picture of that, because these people were very religious and zealots and could revolt, and so they had to keep close watch, and different rules and regulations were in place because of that. Josephus gets into that.
And how 2.2 billion people are following something that's so obviously fake. I don't understand. The answer is, the truth is I do understand, because they don't really look. They don't really look about it. It's an easy religion. Just believe. Okay, fine, I got to do whatever I got to do. It's not a big deal. It's not a hard religion. They'll do it. How many people, the people that I really blame is the people that actually study this and they know this, they can't give answers. I've searched for the answers. I try. When I prepare these type of classes, I'm like, listen, it's not fair to give only one-sided opinion. What do the Christians say for these things? They don't have answers. The answers are like nursery answers. You got to listen to that. It's not true. It's divine. You got to such stupid answers that don't even come close to have any validity, any logical sense to it. How 2.2 billion people are following this thing? For my life, I don't understand it. And people are like, they're loving it. They're enjoying it. I really don't understand. The truth, definitely not the truth. Very, very easily refuted, very, very easily and obvious that this is not a divine religion. I want to finish off with Mormonism. Now, just so you know, I shouldn't even need to...
So honestly, I don't feel like defending Mormonism. I've read a little bit about it. I know what he's going to say, so I'm not going to waste 20 minutes going into that. So we'll just end the video here. If there was something else important at the end, let me know, because I'm just not going to bother listening to it. I've spoken to Mormons. They have some interesting thoughts, some things that they get right that I think Christians don't. But overall, it's scary. It's scary where they've taken it. And it's this ascension to godhood that is the end goal that I very disagree with. And there's just not a lot of historical proof for the Book of Mormon, for Jews leaving Jerusalem and crossing the sea and crossing the Pacific and building kingdoms in the Americas that we don't have record of. Alright, so hopefully you guys like this.